Hello, and welcome to this week's Letter to Past Self, where this Letter to Past Self will be focusing on the playtesting that I did for my game, What Keeps the Fire Alive. For the first playtest, the questions that I asked for was mostly about the relationship between the child and parent and what the lessons were being taught. The reason why I wanted to focus on these particular questions was because I wanted to get an understanding if what we currently had at this stage was getting conveyed easily, like the general loop. This being both the lesson and the relationship. Uh, for the first one, what do you think the child learned? I wanted to keep that as a long response thing so that we can get a an idea of what the player is thinking of what these lessons are and what is generally saying. The idea message that we were trying to go at this point was to see if the player and also the child were understanding that they were trying to make a fire. And it says in our feedback, it was generally coming across, but also as well they didn't understand that that was getting the list, and that they missed the text and didn't get that. The other question was what relationship between the child and parent was, and a follow up question. The first one being a range question featuring between distance and not close, and close hitting it well. These two these two responses, these two different sides of this scale question allowed us to get a more clear and decisive range of how the players felt, seeing as it was either a strong or a weak or a middle. They were unsure in how the relationship between the two felt. For this one, they felt that the parent and child's relationship was either non-existent or in the middle, either not realizing that they were there, or that the child was even there, or that the relationship between this was even contextualized and treated well. For our second one was what leads you to believe to your answer for the previous question based on that range, and majority of those answers was just as I was predicting them to be, being answers of I completely missed the key parts of the relationship between, or they felt that they were able to read the text and felt that it was middle road in how the thing and stuff. Also, in every single questionnaire I always do any other comments just so then I can get more feedback and more understanding of what the playtester wants to give us. And majority of that was mostly small little details and errors, uh, being the fact that a lot of the sizing of objects was wrong, and they felt too large or too small. This being the fence posts and the trees being a little too big, or either. And a lot of the other comments was celebrating the things that we were able to pull off well, like the atmosphere and the art style that we were doing. From this feedback, uh, for this playtest, the lessons was not coming through to the player, and since the child was absent from the scenes, it made it difficult to communicate the relationship between the two, as well as the text between the parent and child was not different. It was default Unity text, which was white, so there was no distinguishable things between the child and parent speaking, which made it very difficult for a reader to or playtester to be able to get that distinguishes, as well as the environment didn't fit the sizing to what it was, because a lot of the fence posts were too small and felt more like a chicken pen, and that they needed to be scar- uh, larger up. After this playtest, I decided to come up with using both font and color of the using different font and color for each the parent and the text, each being different, as well as change how the past and the present and well, mostly changing how the past looks within the level because a lot of people felt that the past wasn't particularly right, and that's what I did from this playtest and gained a lot of information. For our next playtest, I changed the questions up because I wanted to see because we would got new things and we wanted to test it. For this playtest, I kind of wanted to see if our presence and our past had a strong sense of feel, as well as if the lessons were being reinforced or at least understanding of what they are. So my questions for this one was how did the past felt? How did the present felt? Uh, and why did you get these feelings? And what lessons they were being taught, like the child. For how the past and present felt, it was a scalar between two different ones. One being the past felt could either feel very warm or very cold, and the present could feel very warm or very cold. Keeping those two things, so that when the player reads this question, they'll be able to understand the type of question that I am asking for. And for the responses of these questions, the present was able to hit the type of feel and emotion that we wanted, being a lot more cold and distant, because that was the type of feeling and emotions that we wanted within these scenes. But the past had a large mix where it was in the middle, in which some people did feel that it was hitting the point, as others felt that it was a little too cold in the scenes that they were looking at. As well as with that follow up question explaining, I didn't explain too much detail, is what aspects of the game influence your decision of the previous question. And a lot of the responses within this question was the visuals, the audio, as well as the generalized text and scenery. They were able to understand through both the written text and the visual text, and the audio really helped settle the player into the right mood and feel for those scenes. But for the past, we need to work more into those things. The other question that we had, which was the last one, or first one I should say, is what do you think the child learns? For this, at this moment, we had about two different scenes in which was having to make a fire, and as well as I believe the car trip memory about making sure you use the right decisions, as well as don't drink still water. Still water. You should always drink running water. And in general, the responses were is that they got both the fact that the child is learning survival skills, and that they're trying and how to stay alive in a frozen wasteland and starting a fire. So we were able, from this playtest, we were able to answer the important question that we were unable to answer in our last playtest, which was the child learning something? And the answer was yes, and they were able to explain what that person was to the answer that we were expecting. For the any other comments, a lot of them were like feedbacks about other different things, being like the walking felt a little strange with the slow head bob and the extremely fast movement, as well as some of the dialogue was inconsistent on where they were spawning and how they were being seen, with some bits you could not see and other things were difficult to read based on the color choices, the color palette that we had at the time. So from this playtest, most of the feedback was about the lessons that were taught, but lessons within the text. The present felt particularly right in how it was displaying both audio and visuals. The past was mixed, in which it was either some people felt it was hitting that warm and comfy feeling, but others felt that it wasn't strong enough. They felt that when answering about the present, that all aspects within that area really helped to contextualize or visual like get them into that simulation and zone of being in a post-apocalyptic world where it's just covered in snow. From this feedback, it made me rethink and how I should design the pass and constructing how I should make the player walk through the levels and how the placement of the text is a lot more important because a lot of people had no concise idea of how the pass should feel, and we need to clear that up a lot more within this thing. We didn't do too many playtests after this, but we did a lot of internal playtests, and a lot of those was a lot of it was me figuring out how I was able to be more creative with using 3D text and how I should design my levels. A lot of the feedback that I got from these internal playtests was that my levels felt particularly empty and didn't feel they lived in, and I needed to add some more things. I was able to do that well with the campfire scenes and the ones in the forest, where I was able to add a lot more detail and make them feel a lot more livable with the scenery and background, but the interactive space themselves still felt empty and needed to work on that. Anyway, thank you for listening to this week's Letter to Past Self. I'll see you next time.